The scent of cinnamon pie and roasted turkey floats through the Prescott family home, wrapping around me like a childhood blanket as I step through the front door. 5 years away in Chicago, and Asheville still smells exactly the same during Thanksgiving, like warmth, like tradition, like home, or what used to be home. I pause in the hallway, my fingers still gripping the handle of my rolling suitcase. The grandfather clock in the corner ticks away, marking seconds that suddenly feel heavier than they should. Mom has already disappeared into the kitchen after a brief, perfunctory hug, leaving me alone with the familiar family portraits lining the walls. My brother Landon's face beams from most of them. Walking toward the study to greet Dad, I hear his voice before I see him, muffled but clear enough through the mahogany door left slightly ajar. Your sister isn't worth a dime. My body freezes mid-step, blood turning to ice in my veins. There must be some mistake, some context I'm missing. I lean closer, barely breathing. Richard, she'll be here any minute, Mom's voice answers, quiet but not disagreeing. Through the crack in the door, I see her standing by the window, arms crossed, watching fallen leaves dance across the lawn. And, Dad continues, doesn't change facts. Landon's app is going to revolutionize the industry. What has Catherine ever done besides ask for money and disappear to Chicago? The warmth I felt upon arrival hollows out inside me, leaving nothing but an empty cavity where childhood security once lived. My throat tightens as I stare at my hand still outstretched toward the door. The diamond engagement ring catches the light, suddenly feeling like it weighs 1,000 pounds. A memory flashes. 16-year-old Landon scoring the winning touchdown. The entire family celebrating at a restaurant afterward. Mom and Dad beaming, ordering champagne for the adults, and letting Landon have a sip for the occasion. 3 weeks earlier, I'd won the regional science competition. No one came. The certificate still sits in a drawer somewhere, unsigned. You've always been so independent, Mom had said when I mentioned it, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. You're strong, Catherine. You don't need us hovering like Landon does. Strong. The word they always used when what they meant was inconvenient. Only grandmother Eleanor had seen through it. They mistake your self-sufficiency for permission to ignore you. She'd told me once, her weathered hands cupping mine. Don't let them exploit what makes you special. But I had, for years. I straightened my spine and pushed the door open, plastering on the smile I've perfected since childhood. Hello, I made it. Dad quickly shifts in his leather chair, his face transforming from irritation to practiced pleasure. There she is, he announces, standing to offer a brief hug that barely makes contact. Traffic wasn't too bad? Not bad at all, I reply, the lie sliding easily from my lips. The traffic had been horrible, but they don't actually want to know. Dinner's almost ready, Mom says, crossing the room to straighten a picture frame that doesn't need straightening. Landon and Jessica will be here any minute with the kids. Great. I actually have some news I'd love to share at dinner, I say, twisting the engagement ring on my finger. David proposed last month, and, did your brother tell you about his app? Dad interrupts, his eyes lighting up in a way they never do for me. $3 million in first-round funding. The investors practically threw money at him. That's wonderful, I manage, the excitement about my own news deflating like a punctured balloon. Congratulations to him. The boy's a genius, Dad continues, as if I hadn't spoken. Natural business sense. Mom notices my ring then, glancing down at my hand. Is that new? She asks. But before I can answer, she adds, could you help me in the kitchen? I'm running behind. In the kitchen, I chop onions with mechanical precision, fighting back tears that have nothing to do with the vegetables. Mom hums beside me, occasionally glancing over with that condescending smile that has always said more than her words. So, an engagement ring? She finally asks, her tone suggesting she's humoring me. Yes, David proposed on the lakefront. He's a pediatric surgeon now. And, did you hear what your father said about Landon's app? She interrupts, reaching past me for the salt. After all those years of supporting him through his finding himself phase, we always knew he'd make something of himself. The knife in my hand pauses mid-chop. The implication hangs in the air between us. Unlike me, goes the unspoken addition. Something shifts inside me then, subtle but seismic. A small crack forms in the foundation of what I've always accepted as normal. The knife resumes its rhythm. But behind my polite nod and appropriate murmurs of interest about Landon's success, a quiet determination begins to form. For the first time, I see the pattern with perfect clarity, not as the natural order of things, but as something constructed, maintained, and deeply wrong. The revelation settles into my bones like a diagnosis finally naming a lifelong illness. I am not the problem. I never was. And as the doorbell rings announcing Landon's arrival, I make a silent promise to the little girl who once put away her science trophies to make room for her brother's football participation medals. This ends now. The digital clock on my nightstand flips to 2:17 a.m. as I stare at the ceiling, sleep a forgotten luxury. Dad's words from earlier today replay like a broken record. Your sister won't see a penny of what's left from Mom's estate. We've already decided. I couldn't have misheard. Not twice in one day. My laptop beckons from my overnight bag. A strange calm washes over me as I slip out of bed, the hardwood floor cold against my bare feet. Grandma Eleanor's voice echoes in my memory. Trust your instincts, Catherine. They've never led you astray. The blue glow of my screen illuminates the guest bedroom as I log into my banking portal. What begins as curiosity transforms into methodical investigation. I create a new spreadsheet, fingers flying across the keyboard with surgeon-like precision. Each transaction tells a story I've been too blind to read. Family emergency. Dad had called it in 2017. $5,000 transferred. Just until Landon's app gets funded. In 2019. $8,000 gone. Your mother's medical bills. In 2021. $12,000 vanished. On and on the list grows. Small amounts, large amounts. Always with a promise of repayment that never materialized. Always framed as temporary assistance that somehow became permanent gifts. They mistake your self-sufficiency for permission to exploit you, Grandma had warned. By 4:30 a.m., the evidence has become undeniable. $57,600 over 8 years. My throat tightens as I cross-reference the dates with my own hardships. The month I ate nothing but ramen to make rent. The year I couldn't afford health insurance. The dental work I postponed for 3 years. But worse discoveries await in my email archives. I search Eleanor Estate and find the forwarded documents from after Grandma's death 4 years ago. Insurance paperwork. Dad had called it, rushing me to sign during Thanksgiving dinner preparation. Just formalities for releasing the funds. The PDF loads slowly, each pixel revealing another betrayal. Not insurance forms, loan guarantees. My signature, authorizing Dad to borrow against my inheritance portion. $10,500 that should have been mine, now listed as a family allocation. My fingers hover over the keyboard, trembling not from fear but from something colder, harder, clarity crystallizing into resolve. The faces of my betrayers materialize in my mind with perfect clarity. Dad Richard Prescott, financial advisor to half of Asheville's elite, architect of my systematic financial bleeding. The manipulator who turned my independence into a weapon against me. Mom Margaret, whose carefully cultivated silence enabled every transaction. Her specialty, diverting conversations whenever money arose, ensuring questions remained unasked and unanswered. And Landon, my brother, golden child, unwitting beneficiary of resources siphoned from my future. Did he know? The question burns briefly before being extinguished by the mountain of evidence before me. Outside, the first gray light of dawn breaks through the curtains. I've been at this for hours, compiling a 9-page ledger of betrayal spanning nearly a decade. The confusion and hurt that kept me awake have transmuted into something unexpected, cold, implacable clarity. I print the documents, the printer whirring quietly in the pre-dawn stillness. 3 copies, each highlighting a different aspect of the exploitation, one showing every dollar transferred, one documenting the forged guarantees, one calculating interest on what should have been repaid. My reflection in the darkened window looks different somehow. Shoulders straighter, jaw firmer, eyes clear. The emotional appeals ended yesterday. Today begins with evidence. You cannot fight what you cannot name, Grandma Eleanor used to say. Now I've named it, documented it, quantified it down to the last penny. What they've stolen goes beyond money. My security, compromised by forged documents bearing my signature, my identity as the strong one weaponized against me, my financial independence, undermined by constant drainage. Most unforgivable. Grandma Eleanor's legacy, her final gift meant to launch my future, redirected through deception to fund Landon's 3rd failed startup attempt. The sun crests the horizon, painting the room in amber light. I place the documents in 3 folders, color-coded for impact rather than organization. In 4 hours, the family will gather for breakfast. The perfect backdrop for revelations. I close my eyes, not to sleep but to center myself. What happens next will permanently alter every relationship in this house. The daughter they've known, compliant, self-sufficient, easily dismissed, died sometime during the night, replaced by someone they won't recognize, someone who finally sees the truth. My fingers trace the neat rows of figures on the printed ledger, each number a small piece of myself reclaimed. My first victory in a war I didn't know I was fighting until now. Expensive enlightenment, but worth every penny. I place the folders on the nightstand and lie back, watching the ceiling brighten with morning light. For the first time since arriving, I feel something like peace. The clarity of complete financial accounting has come at a devastating emotional cost, but as Grandma would say, the truth may not set you free, but it sure shows you which locks need picking. Tomorrow, I'll worry about the future. Today is for justice. The morning light filters through the kitchen blinds, casting parallel bars across the dining table, where I've arranged everything with military precision. 4 ceramic mugs, a carafe of coffee strong enough to strip paint, and 3 manila folders positioned at exact right angles. Each folder bears a name in black permanent marker: Richard, Margaret, Landon. My handwriting, normally a rush scrawl, appears oddly calm on the labels, belying the hurricane in my chest. I check my watch. 7:28 a.m. The sound of footsteps and morning complaints drifts down from upstairs. They'll be here in moments, stumbling into what they think is just another family breakfast. My fingers trace the edge of the center folder. 9 pages of financial records. 8 years of calculated exploitation. $57,600 in emergency loans that were never emergencies and never loans. The numbers dance in my vision like an accusation. The stairs creak. I straighten my spine and pour coffee into each mug with deliberate slowness. Dad enters first, newspaper tucked under his arm, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of me fully dressed and waiting. "You're up early," he remarks, reaching for his usual chair. "I thought we should talk before everyone scatters for the day." My voice sounds foreign to my own ears, flat, unadorned, stripped of the desperate need for approval that has colored it for 31 years. Mom appears next, her silk robe cinched tightly at the waist, followed by Landon, his hair still mussed from sleep. They take their seats with the casual entitlement of people who have never questioned their place at the table. I wait until they've each taken a sip of coffee, until they've settled into the comfort of routine. Then I slide the folders toward them, one for each. "Here's every dollar I sent you," I say, the words falling from my lips like stones. "Every cent taken from Grandma Eleanor's inheritance. Everything." Dad's coffee mug freezes halfway to his mouth. "What's this supposed to be?" "Evidence." I tap the top page in his folder, a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and alleged purposes highlighted in yellow. 8 years of financial exploitation. $57,600 in transfers to this family. $10,500 stolen from Grandma's inheritance that was meant for me. Mom's face pales beneath her expensive moisturizer. "Catherine, families help each other. That's what families do." Her voice carries that familiar note of righteous dismissal, but it sounds hollow now. A rusted bell. "Is that what you call it? Help?" I pull out the forged loan guarantee from Dad's folder. "What about the documents you had me sign, claiming they were insurance forms, the ones that made me guarantor for Landon's business loan?" "We gave you opportunities," Mom interjects, leaning forward with the practiced intensity she uses to redirect uncomfortable conversations. "We paid for your education, My education was covered by scholarships," I correct her. "Which you know because you complained about attending the awards ceremony." Landon reaches for his folder with visible reluctance, his fingers trembling slightly as he flips through the pages. His eyes widen at a highlighted transfer from 3 years ago, $20,000 for medical emergency that coincided perfectly with his startup's launch date. "You took her money for my project?" he asks our parents, voice cracking slightly. The question hangs in the air between them, met with telling silence. Something shifts in the room, then a subtle transfer of power. For the first time, I see doubt cloud my brother's face as he stares at our parents. The golden sun glimpses his own tarnished pedestal. "I've spent my life believing I wasn't worth your attention." I continue, my voice steady, despite the emotional turmoil roiling beneath the surface. "But I was worth stealing from, wasn't I?" Dad recovers first, his businessman's composure sliding back into place. These are family matters, Catherine. Not everything is a balance sheet. Your grandmother would understand. No. The word rings across the table with quiet authority. She wouldn't. That's why you waited until after she died to take her money. I pull a small brass key from my pocket, running my thumb over the word engraved on its bow. Boundaries. Grandma Eleanor's last gift to me. Symbolizing her garden shed where she retreated when family became too much. The place where she'd taught me that worth isn't measured in approval. I've canceled all recurring transfers from my accounts to yours. I inform them, pocketing the key again. My credit files have been frozen to prevent any future attempts at fraud. The bank's fraud department has been notified, with copies of all this documentation. Mom's face contorts with practiced hurt. You're reporting your own family to the authorities? After everything we've done for you? I haven't filed charges. Yet. I emphasize the last word, letting it settle between us like a promise. But my lawyer has been notified about the identity misuse. He's drawing up papers as we speak. The wall clock ticks loudly in the silence that follows. For years I've mistaken family loyalty for obligation, allowing it to be weaponized against me, binding me to people who saw me as nothing more than a convenience. I'm taking the promotion in Boston, I announce, rising from my chair. The job offer I've spent weeks agonizing over suddenly feels like liberation rather than abandonment. Senior Finance Director. They need an answer by Monday. Boston? Mom's voice rises. But that's across the country. What about holiday gatherings? What about me? I finish for her. For the first time, the question doesn't sound selfish to my ears. It sounds necessary. I gather the empty coffee mugs, stacking them with methodical precision. The evidence stays on the table. I've made copies for myself. Let them sit with the paper trail of their betrayal. I have a flight to catch, I say, retrieving my purse from the counter. The 9 pages of evidence are already tucked into my carry-on, the weight of them somehow lighter than the burden of willful ignorance I've carried for decades. They remain frozen at the table as I walk toward the door, leaving them in the chaos of their own making. No dramatic exit needed, just the quiet finality of a decision made with clear eyes. The taxi waiting outside will take me to the airport, then to Boston, where a corner office with a harbor view awaits. Senior Finance Director. The title feels right, earned through competence rather than connection. As I close the front door behind me, I feel Grandma Eleanor's key warm against my skin through my pocket. Boundaries. The word no longer feels like a wall I build to keep others out, but a foundation I create to keep myself intact. My old life closes behind me with deliberate finality. The new one waits, ready to be claimed on my terms. A week later, the Charles River glistens below my apartment window, sunlight dancing across its surface like scattered diamonds. I press my palm against the cool glass, allowing myself a moment to breathe in this view that now costs me an extra $30,000 a year. Worth every penny for the distance it creates. Miss Prescott? The security consultant clears his throat behind me. We're finished with the final installation. I turn, surveying my transformed living space. New locks, security cameras at the entrance, a private number unlinked from any family contacts. The walls are freshly painted a deep burgundy, my choice, not Mother's preferred pastels that always made me feel like I was living inside a baby's nursery. Perfect. I sign the final payment authorization. And you're certain about the protocols we discussed? He nods, professional and crisp. Anyone claiming to be family will be flagged immediately. They won't get past the building entrance without your explicit approval. On my mantel, Grandmother Eleanor's brass key sits displayed in a small glass case, the only family heirloom I kept. The key to her lake house where she taught me to trust my instincts. Now it serves as both memory and boundary marker. They took so much, but they can't take her wisdom from me. Thank you, I tell the consultant, walking him to the door. That will be all. Once alone, I open my laptop, continuing the meticulous organization of financial records that's consumed my evenings since arriving in Boston. 8 years of transactions, color-coded and annotated. Potential legal exhibits labeled and cross-referenced. Jennifer Maxwell, my attorney, called it the most thorough client documentation she'd ever seen. The email notification appears while I'm double-checking a particularly damning bank statement from 2022. Mother's name in bold, subject line, "Please reconsider what you're doing to this family." The message arrives 3 weeks after my departure, right on schedule. I click it open. already knowing the emotional bullets waiting inside. Catherine, I've barely slept since Thanksgiving. Your father is devastated by your accusations. After everything we've sacrificed for you, how could you repay us with such cruelty? Landon asks about you constantly. Please come home so we can talk about whatever confusion has caused this behavior. I save the email to my evidence folder without responding. The timestamp matters for establishing the pattern. My phone rings a Boston area code I don't recognize. Catherine Prescott speaking. I answer, professional tone firmly in place. Miss Prescott? Thomas Berger here from East Coast Investments. I'm an old friend of your father's. He's concerned about you and asked if I might reach out, see if we can smooth things over. The first business associate deployed. I make a note of the name and company while responding. Mr. Berger, I appreciate your call, but this is a private matter. Please don't contact me again regarding my family. Before I can hang up, he adds, your father mentioned you might be under significant stress, perhaps affecting your judgment. He only wants what's best. Goodbye, Mr. Berger. I end the call, adding his information to my growing spreadsheet of flying monkeys. Father must be truly worried to activate his business network this quickly. The pattern accelerates over the next few days. Cousin Sarah calls, voice breaking with carefully manufactured concern about my mental state. Uncle Peter leaves a voicemail suggesting I'm throwing away my inheritance over a misunderstanding. 3 distant relatives. Barely know. Send tearful messages about healing the family. Meanwhile, the narrative spreads through carefully crafted social media posts. Mother shares throwback photos with captions like, missing my daughter, praying she finds peace. Father's country club friends comment with thinly veiled suggestions about young professionals burning out, and family is everything during a crisis. I screenshot everything, adding it to my evidence file. They're following the narcissist's playbook to the letter, Jennifer Maxwell says when we meet in her downtown office. Sunlight glints off her steel-framed glasses as she reviews my latest documentation. First denial, then recruitment of allies, then attacking your stability. Will it work against us? I ask, watching her expression carefully. Jennifer shakes her head, red curls bouncing against her shoulders. Not with this level of financial evidence. The forged signatures alone are enough for criminal charges if you wanted to pursue that route. I don't want them in jail, I explain, remembering Father's face when I confronted him. Not remorse, fear of consequences. I want them legally prevented from ever accessing my finances again. She nods, understanding. We'll continue building the case. Meanwhile, I've arranged for you to meet with Samuel Winters tomorrow, best financial security expert in Massachusetts. He'll review the forged documents. I leave Jennifer's office with a stronger step, heading directly to my therapist's building 10 blocks away. Dr. Patterson's office feels like neutral territory, the only place where I don't need to maintain my defenses. The flying monkeys are exactly what we anticipated, she says after I describe the week's contacts. How are you managing the emotional impact? I consider the question seriously. Better than expected. Each attempt feels predictable now, less destabilizing. I've named the pattern, so it's lost some power. Dr. Patterson smiles slightly. That's significant progress. And your workplace boundaries? Secure, I confirm. Lisa has been extraordinary. Lisa Bennett, my department director and unexpected mentor, had immediately understood the situation when I requested privacy protections. She'd implemented them without questions, then offered her personal support over lunch. Anyone trying to reach you will go through me first, she'd promised, eyes sharp with recognition of abuse patterns. I've dealt with something similar. Your career won't suffer because of their actions. Outside Dr. Patterson's office, my phone buzzes with Michael's text. Meeting finished early. Dinner at my place tonight? Made your favorite pasta. To my 4. Michael Carter, my fiancé, the unwavering center in this hurricane. He'd listened to every horrifying revelation without judgment, helped me compile evidence at 3 a.m., and never once suggested reconciliation would be easier than justice. I text back a simple, yes please, be there at 7, feeling my shoulders relax for the first time today. The escalation arrives the next morning. A certified letter from Hampton and Associates, my father's longtime legal counsel. I photograph the envelope before carefully opening it. This firm represents Richard and Margaret Prescott regarding defamatory statements made by Catherine Prescott to multiple parties. Cease and desist all communications regarding alleged financial improprieties or face significant legal consequences. I forward the image to Jennifer immediately, then continue my morning routine without breaking stride. Their predictability makes this easier. By afternoon, the true damage appears. Samuel Winters calls directly, voice tight with urgency. Miss Prescott, I've completed the initial review of your accounts. There's an outstanding loan of $85,000 against your credit taken out 3 months ago for Prescott Development, LLC. The signature matches your father's handwriting, not yours. My stomach tightens, but I keep my voice steady. Document everything, please. Can you check if there have been any recent attempts to access my investment accounts? The pause tells me everything before he speaks. Yes, 2 attempts yesterday citing a family emergency authorization. The requests were denied. I end the call and stand at my window, watching the river flow inexorably forward. The board is set exactly as I predicted, every move calculated to break my resolve or frighten me into submission. My office phone rings the front desk security. Miss Prescott? There's a Margaret Prescott here insisting on seeing you. Says she's your mother. She's becoming quite agitated. Mother's surprise ambush right on schedule. Please escort her from the building. She is not permitted contact with me under any circumstances. Already done, the security officer confirms. She's being removed now. I return to my spreadsheet, adding the latest incidents. The battle lines couldn't be clearer. My personal phone rings Landon's name on the screen. I hesitate, thumb hovering over the reject button. My brother. Beneficiary of their preferential treatment, yes, but perhaps not fully aware of the financial crimes. After a moment's calculation, I answer. Catherine? His voice sounds smaller than I remember. Are you okay? Everyone's saying you had some kind of breakdown. I'm perfectly fine, Landon. I keep my tone neutral. Is that why you're calling? A long pause. No, I found some papers in Dad's office. Loan documents with your signature, but I know it's not your handwriting. I recognize Dad's. There's more, too. What's going on? The first crack in their united front, a potential ally where I least expected one. That's a very long conversation, I reply carefully. Are you certain you want to have it? His voice strengthens slightly. Yes, I think I do. I make a note in my evidence file. Landon's call potential alliance shift. That evening, Michael helps me assemble the final components of our counterattack. The comprehensive evidence package sits on my dining table: financial records, identity theft documentation, forensic handwriting analysis, 8 years of unauthorized transactions, totaling over $200,000. The federal authorities have your identity theft report. Jennifer confirms over speakerphone. The cease and desist letter is ready for your approval, including specific penalties for further contact. I sign the electronic document she's sent, feeling the weight of this moment. Send it. Michael squeezes my hand as I end the call. Are you ready for what comes next? He asks. I look at Grandmother Eleanor's key catching the last light of day. They've spent my entire life preparing me for this fight. They just never expected me to win it. The river flows darkly below my window as night falls, carrying everything toward its inevitable destination. The trap is set, the evidence compiled, the allies secured. Let them come. A week later, the attorney's office smells like lemon polish and expensive leather. I sit ramrod straight in my chair, the conference call about to begin. My palms should be sweating, but a curious calm has settled over me, the kind that comes when you've already accepted the worst possible outcome and decided to forge ahead anyway. Miss Prescott, we're connecting now. My attorney, Sandra, murmurs. Her silver hair catches the light as she nods toward the speakerphone. The red light blinks twice before voices fill the room. Catherine. Dad's voice carries that familiar authoritative tone, the one that used to make me shrink. This is completely unnecessary. We should discuss this as a family. I glance down at the folder before me, tabbed with colored markers and organized with military precision. A text from David lights up my phone. Standing with you. I silence it and look up. All further correspondence must be documented. Any discussion happens through our attorneys. I will not engage in unrecorded conversations. Each sentence falls like a gavel, measured and final. The 3 sentences I rehearsed for hours. Sweetheart, please. Mom's voice wavers with practiced vulnerability. We've always supported you. Remember when we helped with your first apartment? Sandra slides a printout toward me. Evidence item 17. canceled check for apartment help, followed by bank records showing Dad withdrawing the identical amount from my trust fund 3 days later. Mrs. Prescott, Sandra interjects, we have documentation that the financial support you reference was actually Miss Prescott's own inheritance, redirected through your accounts. The pattern is quite clear. A sharp intake of breath from the speakerphone. Richard Prescott has built a reputation in this community for 40 years, their attorney begins. These allegations of fraud are demonstrable. My voice doesn't waver. Let's review the timeline. I begin methodically, starting with the first transfer 8 years ago, January 15th, 2017, $10,000 withdrawn from my account with a forged signature. The funds appeared in Landon's business startup account on January 16th. Dad attempts to interrupt, but I continue, cool as winter water. February 28th, 2019. $15,000 diverted from grandmother Eleanor's bequest specifically earmarked for my education. The forensic handwriting analyst confirms the signatures on these documents are forgeries, Sandra adds, tapping her pen against the report. The implications for tax fraud alone. This is absurd, Dad blusters, but the edge of panic in his voice tells me everything. Catherine has always been dramatic. Always. March 12th, 2022. I continue, undeterred. Loan guarantee for Landon's second venture, presented to me as insurance paperwork while I was recovering from surgery. Silence stretches across the line. May I please speak to Catherine alone? Landon's voice suddenly breaks through, sounding smaller than I've ever heard him. That's not advisable. His father's attorney begins. I'm willing to take a separate call, I reply, surprising myself. Despite everything, something in his tone reaches past my armor. Mom begins to weep, the familiar symphony of guilt-inducing sobs that once sent me scrambling to make things right. Now they sound hollow, mechanical even. Richard, there are serious implications here, their attorney murmurs, voice barely caught by the microphone. We're prepared to present complete bank records showing systematic transfers from Catherine's accounts to family members over 8 years, Sandra continues. Additionally, we have text message documentation establishing a pattern of emotional manipulation to facilitate financial exploitation. I flip to the final page of my evidence folder. Screenshots of texts. Dad asking for small loans when I'd received recognition at work. Mom suggesting I was selfish for questioning family expenses during holidays. The timestamp on each perfectly aligned with withdrawals from my accounts. Landon didn't know. Dad's voice hardens. Leave him out of this. I didn't want to believe it. Landon says, his voice strained. But I found the paperwork, Dad. The transfer records for my business loan. You said that came from your retirement. A fracture in the perfect family portrait. The golden sun stepping out of the frame. You've always been jealous of your brother's success. Mom hisses, abandoning the tears when they failed to work. This vindictive display. We have copies of Miss Prescott's professional achievements and income statements. Sandra interrupts. Her success is well documented, despite receiving none of the family support that was directed to her brother. Uncle Thomas clears his throat. I'd almost forgotten the extended family members were on the call. Richard, is this true? Eleanor's inheritance was specifically for Catherine's. The money stayed in the family, Dad snaps. It's all the same pot. It wasn't yours to take, I say, each word crystalline in its clarity. Our settlement terms are as follows. The demands flow from me like a river breaking through a dam. Full financial restitution with calculated interest. Legal acknowledgement of the fraud. A binding no-contact agreement with financial penalties for violations. Public correction of the family support narrative they've cultivated. A written apology for the theft of grandmother's inheritance. When I finish, the silence stretches so long I wonder if the call has dropped. You can't possibly expect, Dad begins, but for the first time in my life, his voice holds no power. Those are my terms. The words emerge steady, uncompromising. Mom's crying has stopped entirely. The performance has ended. The audience has left. I'll call you separately, Landon says, resignation, and something like respect in his voice. I look down at my evidence folder, thinking of the years spent believing I was less valuable, less loved, less worthy of protection. The perfect ledger of transactions telling a different story. Not of my inadequacy, but of their exploitation. This ledger is balanced, I say, closing the folder with a finality that echoes through the room. The accounts are settled. As Sandra disconnects the call, I feel the weight of expectation and obligation slide from my shoulders. In their place grows something new, something that belongs entirely to me. Freedom built on truth's unshakable foundation. 6 months later, the Boston apartment catches the late afternoon light, transforming ordinary objects into something extraordinary. I run my fingers along the bookshelf I built myself, touching the framed photo from the Harborside wedding 3 months ago. Michael's eyes crinkle at the corners as he smiles at me instead of the camera, his hand wrapped protectively around my waist. The scholarship committee approved 5 more applicants. I call out as Michael enters with groceries, young women who might otherwise fall into the same traps I did. I really content. He sets the bags down, pride evident in his expression. The Eleanor Mayfield Fund, doing exactly what your grandmother would have wanted. The monthly financial self-defense workshop flyer sits on my desk, featuring testimonials from previous participants. Teaching others to recognize the warning signs of exploitation heals something in me with each session. Sometimes I still expect to feel their absence like a wound. I admit, leaning against the kitchen counter, but it feels more like clarity now, like finally seeing through clean glass after years of looking through smudged windows. Michael kisses my forehead. Your chosen family showed up beautifully for the wedding. I smile, remembering my colleagues from the finance firm, where I now serve as senior director, my therapist seated discreetly in the back row, the women from my support group cheering loudly as we exchanged vows. Even Landon attended, standing quietly at the periphery, our fragile reconnection still finding its footing. Dr. Warner says I've made remarkable progress. I say, unpacking vegetables and arranging them by color, a small ritual that grounds me. Processing family trauma takes time, but I'm not letting it define my future anymore. My phone buzzes with a text from Janna, my newest friend who knows nothing of my past but respects my boundaries without question. This relationship, built on mutual respect rather than obligation, feels revolutionary. At my desk, I open the leather-bound journal, where I've documented my healing journey, each entry marking small victories and occasional setbacks. The early pages detail panic attacks and nightmares. Recent entries celebrate peaceful sleep and genuine laughter. I no longer apologize for my boundaries. I write in today's entry. What once felt like weakness, asking for respect, now feels like my greatest strength. The email from Margaret sits in a folder I rarely open. I saved it not as a tether to the past, but as a reminder of how far I've traveled. Its power to trigger anxiety has diminished with each passing month. 3 scholarship recipients arrive for their mentoring session, eager young faces lighting up when they spot the refreshments I've prepared. Teaching them about financial independence and boundary setting transforms my painful past into purposeful present. My parents always made me feel selfish for saying no, admits Alicia, the youngest at 19. Your boundaries deserve respect, I tell her, remembering my grandmother's words. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who treats your spirit with dignity. Later, I stand by the Charles River as sunset paints the water gold. Michael's warm hand finds mine as we watch sailboats return to harbor. You've built something beautiful from the wreckage, he says softly. Back home, the brass key mounted on our wall catches the last light of day, engraved with boundaries. It represents not what I've locked away, but what I've finally allowed myself to open. In my journal, I write the final entry for this chapter of my life. Family isn't who invests in your worth without demanding repayment. It's who sees your value as inherent, immeasurable, and never for sale. Grandmother Eleanor taught me that knowledge is power, dignity is non-negotiable, and boundaries are sacred. In claiming these truths, I've finally inherited what matters most, a sense of self no one can exploit or diminish. My worth was never measured in dollars. It was always measured in courage.